All right, it's 9 a.m. on the nose, so we will get started. We've got some really great content for you to get through today. First of all, we just want you to know that we are truly thankful that you've committed to spending 30 minutes of your day with us. Although our time together is quite brief, we're really confident that you're going to find a lot of value in this session. It's very timely, for sure. As some of you may know, David has spent more than 35 years of experience as a family therapist, workshop facilitator, lecturer, and advisor to leadership executives from all over the world. He's worked with CEOs from companies such as WestJet, Investors Group, Lilydale, and PharmaSave, and he's presented to countless organizations over the last several decades. David is a best-selling author and respected thought leader in the leadership community, and he is so passionate about helping leaders connect with their authentic selves, and he has a genuine passion and gift for connecting people with the best versions of themselves. Before joining David's team, I attended an 8-week masterclass that he offered, and the changes that I recognized in myself as well as my colleagues were truly phenomenal. He helped us connect with ourselves, each other, and our teams in a way that we had struggled with in the face of challenges presented by COVID-19. He helped us find more confidence, clarity, compassion, and he really helped us show up as the leaders that our teams deserved. It was because of this transformation that I felt so passionate about joining David's team and helping him with his mission. Today's topic, embracing change, navigating your team through uncertainty and volatility, is the 6th of 8 mini sessions where David will be sharing leadership insights and offering a small sample of what you will experience at his 3-day online Authentic Leadership Academy. In April's Academy, we'll be diving into this topic as well as several others in much greater depth. It's going to be a truly transformational experience. And as you listen to today's session, you may feel that you're called to join us for the Academy, where we'd love to have you. We'll let you know a little bit more about that at the end of the session today. We'd also really appreciate you sharing an invite to our next mini session with someone in your life. Maybe a new leader in your organization, a new parent, a friend that's been feeling the great responsibility of leadership and could use some renewed passion. It'd be really wonderful to have you share a link to next week's session and welcome them to this community. Next week's topic is one of my favorites: accountability, turning employees into owners. David's insights and perspectives on accountability will be something you may have never heard or considered before. I know it completely changed the way I think about the world and interact with people in both my personal and professional life. When it comes to leadership and learning, the journey and the responsibility never end. So thank you again for joining us this morning. And without further ado, here's David.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for your usual passion and energy and enthusiasm and presence that you bring to this work. And thank you all for taking a half an hour of your day this morning, wherever you are across the country, and we may have some people around the world. So I would love to hear where you're from. Folks, this is I'm giving you a very small taste of what you would experience, as Kristen said, in my 3-day academy. This is really about a 3-hour module that you're going to get in about a half an hour. So I hope I give you something to reflect on and something that'll be useful. So just so you understand where this fits into the broader picture, my whole approach is this Other Everest journey, which is about this journey down, and that's into your presence. And then, so if you've been to most leadership training that you've had, you've learned about leadership practices, how to build trust, how to get results, how to manage change, how to engage talent, and so forth. And those practices matter. But what matters most, folks, are the inner qualities, that presence of who you are. You know, Kristen brings a great, she has great practices and has great words, but I'll tell you, her presence is what makes a difference on our team. And this is what makes a difference in your life. But you have to take this journey, what I call this journey down to this who you are as a person. So just so you, so we are, the first 4 sessions focused on leadership presence, and this one, the next 4, which is we're in the middle of this next, these series, has to do with leadership practices. So just so you understand where this fits into the whole agenda and the curriculum of that 3-day live stream event, which would really be transformational for you, is the first day we talk about leadership presence. We spend a whole day on that. The second day is on leadership practices. And then the third day we spend on integrating the two together. And we have a Cree elder that's going to be opening each session in the morning and giving her perspective from an Indigenous thought perspective on how do we really hold the space for people. So I'm just really proud of what we have built here together, and just really grateful to be able to offer it to you if it fits for you to sign up for it. All right, let's get into embracing change. I'm going to share with you, I'm not coming at this from an academic perspective, although it certainly would be research backed. I'm going to come at it from a very personal perspective. These are the 6 significant changes in my life. I seem as though I have one about every decade in my life. I would ask you to reflect on what were the significant changes in your life that have made you, defining moments that have made you who you are. So these are some of the things that have, I see Kim has raised her hand there. Maybe, can you look after that? Kristen, maybe in the chat room. Anyway, so the first significant change that I remember is surviving polio at the age of 4, leaving an Orthodox religion in my upbringing, and losing my marriage and my community in my 20s. In my 30s, built my business up. In my 40s, I faced the darkness of trauma, addiction, and clinical depression in my 30s and 40s. Walking my brother, Hal, through his cancer journey and eventual passing in my 50s. And growing through this pandemic in the 60s. I've revolutionized, redesigned my whole business. So I've had my own share of changes in my life. And I think we all have, if you stop and just reflect what changes have made you a better person today. As you look at this, these are the changes that have helped shape me and make me who I am today. I also, just a little bit of humor here, but how deep is the mud? Well, it depends on who you ask. So, we all look at things differently. We all go through change differently. And so I think it's very imperative that no matter what we're going through, we're all going through whatever change it is that we're going through it differently, and we need to be tuned in to both ourselves and other people. So I'm going to show you my little model for this. There's lots of change models. This is the one that I've been developing over the last 30 years in this work of leadership development and working and coaching and mentoring all levels of organization, all levels of leaders in organizations. So I look at the difference between change, transition, and transformation. And change is what goes on outside of a person. So, how many of you have ever moved? You understand that you can move across the country in less than a week. You have to make 3 phone calls. You can call a real estate agent, you can call a moving company, and you can call your spouse, hopefully not in that order. But you can move across this country, frankly, in less than a week. How long does the transition take? Well, the transition, you will find, would take perhaps months. You may never make the transition. If you've ever met somebody who's moved here but never moved here because they've never really made the transition. You see, the change happens outside of a person, but the transition occurs inside of a person. It's the reorientation that people go through when they come to terms with change. I can tell you that when we renovated our house several years ago, we had a year to renovate it. And we were all consumed with the change, with managing the externals, with managing the decisions about what kind of siding to put on it, what kind of countertops to put in it, what kind of bathroom floor do we put in it. We were consumed with the change, and we forgot to pay attention to how that change was impacting our family. And so, we have been, as a society, so consumed with the change of this pandemic, managing the protocols, keeping people safe, managing the structure and the rules around that, which is necessary in the change. But I think we also have to stop and recognize that there's been a transition that people have gone through. I might suggest that there's a collective trauma that we have all experienced to one degree or another in this past 2 years. I've worked with organizations who have frankly brought a grief counselor into their organization and into their team to deal with the grief and to deal with some of the fears that people are going through. It's not unlike a grief process. There's a transition to it. And I think we need to honor that transition. And we don't do a very good job. We manage the change in our organizations much, much better than we manage the transitions. We're all, it's human tendency. I'm no different. When I moved from Lethbridge up to Calgary, we were consumed with where are we going to work and where are we going to park and all the change and, where are we going to live? We were consumed with the change, but we missed the transition. And then the transformation is about leading the process of transition to move you and others into a whole new perception of the world. It's not so much that we're afraid of change, said Marilyn Ferguson, and uncertainty are so in love with the old ways, but it's that place in between that we fear. It's like being in between trapezes. It's Linus when his blanket is in the dryer. There's nothing to hang on to. It's that in-between period. And I can tell you from my own, this is yours truly here, even with a safety net underneath, you had to let go of one trapeze to grab onto the other. It's very frightening to let go of the old and move into the new. Okay. So I've developed this little model. It's based on the vertical axis is certainty, and on the horizontal axis is growth. And I don't know how many of you, if you step back and reflect on this, you really, if you stay certain, you won't grow. These are, and growth is also not linear. It's not a linear process. It's messy and it's evolving. So let me share with you my model. And again, there's many of these kind of change models out there. This is one that just works with me. I think we're probably all saying the same thing, but it starts with attachment to the familiar. We get a foreign element. We go into chaos. We go into a period of reflection. Then we make a decision and we rebuild. We build trust. And the good news is there's new possibilities. The bad news is you get a new attachment, and you have to go through this process over and over and over. And by the way, we probably go through this process 10 times in a day without even recognizing it, because it's so unconscious. Waking up in the morning, a foreign element, the alarm clock hits us. I don't know how many of you are aware that if you slow down, the first 15 minutes of your life is every morning is a little chaotic. And if you sleep in and you're rushed, your whole day is different. If you treat that chaos with respect and say, I'm going to take some stillness, I'm going to stop and have a cup of coffee, reflect on my life, go inside. If you have a process in the morning to get yourself through that process, that chaos, your whole day is very different, as opposed to being unconscious. So all I'm doing here today is I'm just shining a light on what we go through in our lives all the time. And we can get stuck in chaos. What moves us through this are our decisions, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me just break this down. So it's human nature. We get attached to the familiar. It could be a computer program that we get attached to, our way of life. We had a way of life 2 years ago that, we could basically fly wherever we wanted to fly, go wherever we wanted to go, spend whatever we wanted to spend. We could go into debt. If we wanted to call somebody for coffee, we'd just pick up the phone. We went and had coffee with them. It was a spontaneous life. It was a life that was familiar to us all, right? Now we hit a foreign element called this pandemic. Now there's many foreign elements. By the way, I box, and it's been my saving grace, one of my sanctuaries. I've got a buddy that we have this little bubble going on for the last couple of years, and I box in his basement, and in his gym downstairs, he's got a Mike Tyson quote that everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face. Folks, we've all been punched in the face in one way or another these last 2 years. How are we dealing with it? And I think it's important that we stop to recognize it. Now, here's just a sample of some of the foreign elements. It's obviously the pandemic. It could be a death. It could be a layoff. It could be a retirement. It could be an illness. It could be a divorce. Maybe you get some harsh 360 feedback in your leadership, or you're just lying in bed at night and you have this, what we call dark night of the soul, that you begin to question your existence and you begin to have some existential angst going on inside of you. So regardless, what is your foreign element? Stop for a moment and just think about what is your own foreign element that, what is the most prevalent foreign element that you faced in the last 6 months? Maybe it is the pandemic. What's the foreign element that some of your team members have faced? Maybe they've had some subsequent foreign elements as a result of the pandemic. Maybe they've had loss in family, loss in their health, an illness. Maybe, and by the way, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's foisted on you. Sometimes we initiate a foreign element. I initiated the redesign of my business, and threw our whole team into some chaos, threw myself into some chaos. So what a leader will do is that they'll initiate foreign elements. They'll initiate change, and then they're not liked very much because people don't like to go into chaos. But that is a necessary stage in the process. So then we go from foreign element into chaos. And again, when we get into the academy, we get into this stuff in much, much more detail. I'm just giving you a very broad map, but we go into chaos. Now, what happens when we're in chaos? Well, how many of you have ever heard this? When one door closes, another one opens. You know what they don't tell you is that it's hell in the corridor. It's that in-between period. So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the emotions of the chaos, the emotions of the corridor when you're in the middle of chaos. And you can always tell when you're in chaos because there's this sense of, let's go back. Let's go back to the good old days. And there's this natural tendency when we're in the middle of uncertainty to go back to what's certain. It's very much human. It's a human tendency to want to do this, okay? So here's some emotions, and the big three emotions that accompany the corridor of chaos at the foundation of all chaos is fear, loss, and insecurity. Now there's there's variations of this, but one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is, what have you done with your fear, your loss, and your insecurity? Now I'm going to use the pandemic because it's a thread that runs through all of us. Now, many of us are at different stages of this transition in relation to the pandemic, but we have all to some degree felt these three things. And I'm going to ask you, what have you done intentionally with those three emotions? Now, if you don't deal with those emotions, here's what happens. They are what I call primary feelings. And I'm going to speak about us men. I'm going to make a general sweeping observation that us men don't have an easy time with those three emotions. We are not trained at how to deal with those emotions. We're trained that it's a sign of weakness to show those feelings. And as we move into management, we can also feel the same thing. We've got to be in control. We've got to be the stable one here. We can't be showing any of those emotions. So if you don't show those feelings, and if you don't face them and are with them and have a process for letting them go and facing them, what will happen is that they will turn into anger. And this is, again, I'm going to be a bit prone toward being biased toward this, but men have a much more apt to go to the anger. Now, what happens though, and I know that's a sweeping generalization. It's certainly not true of us all, but we go to the anger, and we can tell the anger by irritability. Notice your irritability in your life today, impatience, rage. Notice what's going on. Ask police officers what they've dealt with in terms of rage in families, on the street, in our driving habits, divisiveness. And we're seeing this all over the place in our workplaces, dividedness around, just in terms of just how we view the pandemic, how we view the mandates that we've been under, how we view vaccines. It's divided us. And it's because we haven't come together in our fear, in our loss, and our insecurity. You have to create a place in your workplace, in your families, and starting with yourself, to make room to acknowledge that it's okay to have felt some fear, loss, and some insecurity right now. We're in a new world. And whenever we're learning something new, we're going to feel insecure. And I'm going to put depression up there, because depression is what happens when you take the anger and you turn it inward. And many of us do handle anger. I have a propensity. I was raised, my father suffered from depression, and I was raised with his propensity and toward depression. And I think there's a biological component to it. I've had to work with my depression in my life. I have a tendency to internalize it when I start to feel angry. So when you're feeling some of those symptoms of anger, don't judge yourself, but recognize, oh, I got to go underneath that and deal with what's really going on. Now, can you stay in chaos too long? Absolutely. And these are some indicators of being in that chaos too long. It's a natural, by the way, you can't grow in life without going through some chaos. That's why I don't want us to go back to normal. We all want to go back. Let's get back to normal around here. Well, let's not miss the opportunity to grow from whatever is in front of us. Every experience, if you lead the authentic way, is an opportunity to grow. So let's not miss the growth opportunity that comes through this pandemic. Now, here are the indicators of being in that chaos too long. As natural as it is, if you're not moving yourself through that transition, you're going to get stuck there. Resentment, burnout, cynicism, bitterness, muddled and aimless, exhausted. You have this joyless feeling, unfocused, indifferent, stressed, and stuck. These are indicators, again, that you've got to go back to those primary feelings and really look at what is the experience of the chaos been really like. So I'll just focus on losses, for example, because sometimes it's difficult to put your finger on what it is. Here's some of the losses that I have experienced and that I've experienced with people that I've been coaching and working with in some of my leadership development programs. Smiles and hugs. You know, we haven't been able to just smile spontaneously. Income. Some people have lost their income during this pandemic. Spontaneity. You know, we can't just pick up the phone and go, you know, haven't been able to just go and have a coffee with somebody when we want to. We just can't fly around the world the way that we want to. There's, you know, even planning, you know, my daughter's getting married this summer. And there's this sense of, okay, what if we plan this? Is this going to be okay? And what are the mandates? It just causes this new level of strain that I think we all have experienced when they're in the midst of this chaos. It just takes your energy to manage and to maneuver through it. And what is important is that we just normalize that and that we just let people know it's okay to feel this way so that we don't feel that we're alone. It's when we're alone that we feel like I'm the only one going through this. As I say, when I get depressed, what's really depressing is when you get depressed about being depressed. If you can just say, hey, I'm depressed, you look at what's underneath it, you acknowledge it, you have a community, you embrace it. As we say, bring it out into the sunlight. And the sunlight is the best disinfectant. Now, you don't want to bring it you don't need to bring it into so much into the sunlight that it kills you, because too much sunlight is deadly. You don't have to put it on Facebook and you don't have to bring it out into the whole world, but we need a community that we can bring it in with. Freedoms. We've lost some of our freedoms for the sake of, you know, we're not a society that's given up our freedoms today for the sake of the whole, for the sake of the greater good. We've never done that. And so that's a loss of our health, loss of boundaries for some people working at home. You know, where's the line between, you know, my personal life and my work life? So those are just some of the losses. Now, what are you doing with those losses? We say in the trauma literature, violence is what happens when people don't know what to do with their suffering. So what are you doing to just acknowledge that? The passion comes from the Latin word pati, meaning suffering or enduring. If you want to get to your passion, and if you're not feeling very passionate these days, my sense is it's because we've lost touch with the loss. The path to passion is through suffering and through acknowledging the fact that loss is there. So there's three components to chaos that are very important. Number one is clarity. Know what your values are. You got to have a compass to get you through chaos. There's not necessarily a roadmap, but you got to have a compass. And I can tell you, I've been so working with my sales team, I can tell you that I've been so busy marketing this course that we've been doing and getting sales ideas and getting all this input. I woke up, quite frankly, I woke up in tears this morning because I've lost my voice trying to get the right processes in place and trying to do the right thing in terms of responding to my team. And I lost the very voice that I'm trying to teach people to catch. And we'll lose touch with our voice. You know, burnout is not about heartache, folks. It's about hard work. It's not about hard work, rather. It's about heartache. when we lose touch and connection with our heart. So we got to be really clear when we're going through this. What are our values and what's our purpose? And really clear about our own voice that we can access through this. We got to have a community around us. And it's also a time, folks, where we can be very creative. It's not necessarily the most productive time, but it's a time when we can be very creative. And if we can see what's gone on, I'll bet there's been all kinds of creativity that's been expressed in the last 2 years on your team, regardless of how they've had to deal with this pandemic. Then we get to the reflection period in our life. What am I learning? What is the larger vision? These are some of the reflection questions. You can't do this too early. You got to grieve before you begin to build. And there's no time frame on this. But at some point, we begin to reflect. If my life were a book, what would be its title? And what chapter am I in right now? This relates to the hero's journey. And begin to look at your life as a hero through the hero's journey lens to say, hey, listen, this isn't the end of the story. This is one chapter in the story. What will make all this possible? How am I opening up to this? How is this helping me be a better person? How will all this one day help me make the better world? And what are my needs right now? These are reflection questions. And then we reach a point where we have to make a decision. And here are some decisions. Change your story. We all have stories. And maybe your story is not moving you forward. Let go of blame and fear. Okay, and resentments. Change your attitude. Move from being enraged to being engaged. Change jobs or careers. Change the way that you're doing your job, or just reach out for help and say, you know what? I need help right now. I'm alone through this and I need some help. I can't, it's a lonely journey, but this thing can't be done alone. Okay, so these are some decisions that will move you out of chaos. And if people are stuck in chaos, if you've been in that stage where you're in that chaos stage too long, then we need to help support each other to make those decisions to move forward. And when you begin to notice those indicators of being in the chaos too long, then you're ready to move forward. You must be willing to let go of the life you've planned so that you can have the life that you are meant to live. Okay. And then you begin to rebuild with renewed passion and focus and purpose and alignment. And that's if you really allow yourself to go through this transition to assess. And you're going to have your team members hopefully on all ends of the spectrum here. And you need to really know where you're at personally. Where are you at today? Where's your team at? Where are members of your team at? And how can we support each other to move through that and to honor wherever we're at? Focus, purpose. And then you can get alignment around team. Don't try to get alignment when you're in the chaos. But what you can do is get a connection when you're in the chaos that will move to meaningful alignment, which leads to greater trust, which leads to new possibilities, which again leads to new attachments. So the whole bottom line, and I'll just wrap it up with this, is this notion of the other Everest. And the notion of the other Everest is that we all understand that the tallest point on the planet is Mount Everest at more than 8,000 meters above sea level. What's less known, folks, is the Mariana Trench that's more than 8,000 meters below sea level. It's virtually an inverted Everest. It's that journey down that has happened through chaos. And I'll bet you if I had a talk with every single one of you who are impactful leaders today, you'd all have your own story of what's taken you down. For me, it was helping my brother through the dying process, taking care of my brother. It made me a better person. Dealing with all of those changes that I've had to deal with my life, I've had to learn to get through that whole curve, and you come out of it a better person with greater growth through those kind of opportunities. Although at the time, it feels like when you're in the middle of that transition, it's mushy, but between the caterpillar and the butterfly, it looks like, gosh, you need psychiatric help, but actually it's just a chapter in your life that's taking you to a better place. So my definition of the other Everest is that it's embracing a time of great difficulty, allowing the pain to break us open so that a stronger, wiser, kinder self can emerge. So that is my wish for all of you today, that you will embrace whatever difficulty that you're going through today, that you will see it as not as a breaking down, but as a breaking open, to open yourself up and come out of this thing, whatever this thing is in your own individual lives, a stronger, wiser, and kinder person. Let's all embrace the difficulties in our life with greater realness and authenticity. Thank you very much, everybody. And what I'll do is I'll just, I'll leave you next week. We talked about embracing change. And as Kristen mentioned, next week at the same time, we'll be spending a half an hour. I'll give you a taste around renewing accountability. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing. We'll come back. If there's any immediate questions, please give us your feedback or reactions in the chat room before you leave, if you can. I'd love to hear your voice. I feel like I'm a farmer here. I just throw out seeds. If there's any immediate, I'll stay on the call for an extra 10 or 15 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, if there's any immediate questions that come up. Otherwise, we'll let you get on with your day.